All right there, coaches. Coach Kyle Nelson here. Just wanted to get started with this web clinic. I'm really excited about this one as I was planning it. It's kind of cliche to do something for goal setting and that kind of thing, resolutions and whatnot in the new year. However, when I started planning this one and I started looking at some of the things that a formal and informal goal setting process can make for your program, I became really excited. And the reason I became excited was because I realized, and when you signed up for this web clinic, you noticed that in the email, I used the language that was like, this is much more powerful than just a couple of new drills. Like we all go to clinics, we all see, that we all want that new drill, that magic pill, that thing that's going to fix all our hitters, that thing that's going to make our pitchers throw 90 miles an hour. And you get good things from clinics. You get good things from our website. There's lots of good drills in there. But when you look at creating a program, when you look at creating something bigger than just a collection of drills, this is really the powerful stuff, the stuff that is going to take your team and your program to that next level when you actually get into it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share this keynote presentation with you, and we will go ahead and get started. All right, so quick introduction for those of you who are not familiar with Cornerstone Coaching Academy. That is the online and podcast. So the online website, blog, podcast that I run, that is where I'm running this web clinic through right now. The goal is to help as many youth travel and high school coaches as possible and bring player development into the team setting. I know how difficult it is for coaches in a team setting to bring individualized player development into that team setting, just because of the challenges that you face. You face number challenges, face time challenges, lack of staff, lack of time. And so I think what my ultimate goal for this is that coaches look at their player development and they say, we are able to do what the private instructors are able to do. And we are able to offer a great experience for our players because we can follow these programs. We have this information and we know how to create this individualized player development in a team setting. And this goal setting process is a huge thing of that for coaches. Like where I'm focusing on here more is with your coaches, your coaching staff, than with your team, although this definitely applies to your players as well. The Cornerstone podcast, every Monday I put out a new episode. It is on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Play FM, anywhere you get your podcast, that it is on there. So you just search Cornerstone Podcast. It'll pop up, Cornerstone Coaching Academy Podcast. And every Monday I put out a new episode, about 15 to 20 minutes, and it gives you something really actionable you can take directly back to your team. Next practice, next game, to make them better. We do also offer Cornerstone Elite. It's our private membership where I help coaches bring their careers and teams to the next level. I get to work one-on-one with coaches. We do monthly, bi-monthly. This time we're doing 3 or 4 January Q&As where you get to ask me specific questions that are going on with your program. And I give you detailed answers, point you to exactly where you need to be in the Elite members area. That has all of our resources, practice plans, drills, everything like that in Cornerstone Elite. So that is what we offer. As for me, like I'm just a high school coach. I played college baseball. I was a pitcher in college. When I got into coaching, I tended to learn a lot more about the other aspects of the game because it was the areas I felt that I was weakest in. And that's kind of led me into this growth mindset where I constantly want to get better and learn more about the game. I guarantee you the things that I am teaching and doing right now, not anywhere near or anywhere close to what I was doing when I started this 16 years ago. We don't have 10 state titles. We have kids who are really, really good players. They're dedicated players, and we compete and win games against teams that we probably shouldn't. And the reason for that is that we try to make the most out of the resources that we have. We are very fortunate. We don't have the best resources, the best facilities. We have good ones, but you still have to try to maximize everything that you have. And that's really what, Cornerstone is all about. That's what my goal setting process here is going to be all about. And then again, I've tried to bring player development into the team setting. So I'm trying to get individualized player development in a team setting. So here's what happened. Here's one of the things that um, led to this kind of rediscovery of and self-scouting of my program, um, was our pitching woes. Now, don't get me wrong, we did not have bad pitchers. We did not have, it's not like we had guys who were horrible, couldn't throw strikes. We just lacked those dominant pitchers, right? And we were kind of outmanned. Whenever we had a season ending loss, I looked at it and I said, we were better at a lot of positions, but we were outmanned on the mound. 2 years we had where our defense collapsed. You might say, well, that's a defensive problem. One of the issues was in those 2 games, we struck out a total of 3 hitters, which means that out of 42 possible outs, we were counting on high school defenses to make 39 plays. I don't care how good your high school defense is, something is going to go wrong in there. It went wrong at the wrong time twice. And I looked back at that and I said, yeah, the defense, that's an issue. But if we had maybe struck out 14 in those 2 games total, not each one, if we'd maybe struck out 14 total or even 12 total, that takes some of the pressure off of our defense. And really what that does was we hadn't had a true ace, someone who would go out, punch out 10, and just take the pressure completely off your defense. So I knew I couldn't continue down the same path with that, right? So what I did was I started self-scouting our program. And I said, okay, what are we doing now that is leading to this lack of dominant pitching, right? I know sometimes you're a high school staff and you just get that dominant pitcher that comes through, or if you're a travel ball team, you can recruit that dominant pitcher. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to take our floor and raise it and take our average pitchers and give them a little bit more. Now, this talk is not about pitching. This talk is about the process we went through of finding and determining what we were going to use, how we were going to make ourselves better. Because no matter what you decide to do, no matter how you decide to change your program to improve your program, the process you go about making that decision and the process you go about putting that into place is incredibly important. If that process is not sound, then it's not, there's no end game. There's no way if you did what you were trying to do. So what I would do, all right, I'm going to give you a little overview of a self-scouting of your program. So whether you're at, I have a handful of different levels listening to this right now, watching this. We have a lot of high school coaches. We have a handful of travel ball coaches, some as low as 9U. And so this is going to look kind of different for each of those levels, right? Like, because really the 9U and the 10U and the 11U is going to look completely different than what our high school guys are looking at. But always look at this in terms of where you are right now and then also where you're going to be going. So one of the things I want you to do is, and at the end, I have, for the people who are attending this live and watching this during the 2-hour window of 8 to 10 p.m. Central Time, I will give you this self-scouting form. So as we go through all these steps here, what I've done is I've put together a self-scouting form. It's kind of in the mold of what we did as we were redoing this, but I tweaked it quite a bit and made it, I think quite a bit better for right now. So I give that to you guys. That's actually directly below. So if you're watching it between 8 and 10 p.m. on January the 9th, you will have access to that self-scouting form. It's right down below on the link there. So how are you currently using practice time? This is something that I found that we were greatly underutilizing. Okay, and this is one of the things that led to creating and completely redoing this program. I was a college pitcher, but as a head coach, I'm drawn in a number of different directions, right? I was the pitching coach. Then we hired a guy who had been a pitcher in the Astros organization up to AA. But again, he was in charge of a handful of different things, right? And I didn't really give him any real direction in pitching. I just kind of assumed, hey, he's going to know and he's going to take care of his pitching. I need to teach him about all this other stuff that pitching is going to be sound and taken care of. And I'm not blaming him for anything, but what essentially happened was that, because he had been drawn in so many different directions, he was not able to focus and do the one thing that he was really good at, which was coach pitchers. I want you to also look at how you're utilizing your coaches. Is there anyone who you're, the biggest thing there is underutilizing? Are you underutilizing any of your coaches? Um, when you go into a practice and if you have three coaches, are two of them doing most of the work and one of them not doing very much at all? Perhaps you're underutilizing that coach. Find a way, find something they can be successful at. Even if they're not that strong, find something they can be successful at. Find a way to use them. Utilize your coaching staff to its fullest potential. Facility utilization, think about your practices and think about what your facility looks like, and then say, hey, do we have all parts of the facility being used most of the time? If you do not, like if you think back and you're like, hey, we got people over here, we've got a cage that's open over here. How can you utilize that cage better? And then I want you to break down the way that you use your practice time as far as a percentage or minutes of skills that you work on. And again, this form goes through every skill I could think of that you might do in practice or spend significant time on in practice. And it lets you kind of look at where you're utilizing your skills, and then also or what percentage of time you're working on those skills. And then also you can think about what percentage of time do those things pop up in games, right? Like if you spend 20 minutes a day on rundowns, that's great. You're going to be really good at rundowns. When a rundown happens once out of every 5 games, you're going to get that out. But when ground balls happen 15 times a game, you might not be as good at them. It also looks at how you develop relationships, okay? Because these are all program building things. So this is the first part of our goal setting process. We need to know what we're good at and what we're not good at. So the self-scouting form goes through and looks at how are you developing these relationships. Then you're going to look at your pitching staff. So now we're going to start breaking things down, okay? We're going to look at our pitching staff, and we're going to say, how's our velocity? Everyone wants more velocity. That's a given, right? I don't think that anyone sits out there and says, well, you know what? Our guys average about 83, 84 miles an hour, and that's good enough. Like if your pitchers have the same command at 85 as they did at 83, they're better at 85. But is it an area that you need to look at and seriously consider trying to make improvements in? For us, it was absolutely an area that we needed to make improvements in. And it was, again, we had pitchers who put the ball in play. They did the things coaches wanted, right? They pounded the zone, they put the ball in play, they trusted their defense. Unfortunately, their defense is a high school defense. And so we made mistakes behind them. And I thought, you know what, we're going to keep that same philosophy, but we want to try to develop pitchers with more velocity so we can get more strikeouts and in a sense take a pressure off that high school defense. You're going to look at the command stuff and then how they do on the other stuff, their PFPs, things like that. Again, I say here it's at the end. If you're watching this between 8 and 10 p.m. January 9th Central Times, right below here is the self-scouting form. So you can just click on that link down there and that'll take you to that and our other free gift as well. Again, for those of you that are attending during that window. Other thing that we're going to do, we're going to take a look at our hitters and we're going to say, where are our hitters' strengths and where are our hitters' weaknesses? I look at it more as the players who contribute, right? So at a high school team, there's sometimes a pretty clear divide between the players who are contributing a lot and the players who don't contribute as much. Now, please don't take this to mean that I don't pay attention to or don't care about the players who aren't contributing as much. What I'm doing is I'm saying, yeah, we know that the kids who aren't contributing as much don't throw as hard, don't hit the ball very hard, probably aren't very fast. We understand that, right? So we're looking at the players, the top 12, 13, 14 of your roster, and then your top 5 or 6 pitchers. And that's where we're looking at, with the understanding that on a large high school roster, a lot of that bottom may not be as strong, but that may not be just because they don't hit the ball very hard. Maybe your top 10 do. And so that isn't maybe an area that you need to really dive into, like how do I improve exit velocity, right? Or how do I improve plate approach with, the kids playing at the bottom of your roster when the top of your roster does a pretty good job. That may not be the number one thing you need to look at. So we're looking at plate approach and how well they execute your plan or their individual plan, depending on what your philosophy is with that. I'm going to look at defense, and I'm going to rate how we are with making routine plays. There's numbers to these. So when you go into the self-scouting form, a lot of them, you can go back, if you use Game Changer, you can go back into Game Changer and kind of look at the numbers and trends for your team over the years. And then also we're going to look at our range. And then how do we defend small ball, bunts, defense, first and thirds, the rundowns I mentioned before? How well do we do those things? Do we do those things well? Do we not? I can tell you this much. I've backed off of that quite a bit over the past couple of years in practice. So here's a little bit of goal setting and self-scouting for me. I've backed off of it quite a bit in practice, and we're going to ratchet that back up again just a little bit. We're not going to spend 45 minutes a day on bunt defense, but we're definitely going to make sure that it gets put in every single day, that something along those lines gets put in, and then we do something team defense every single day we have a practice, whether it's bunts, first and thirds, working on steals. We're going to make sure we have something like that every single day, and we got to give something up, right? So you can't have 10-hour practices. We're going to have start 2:15. We're going to give something up. But as I go through this process a little more in depth with myself, I'm going to figure out what is it that I'm going to be willing to give up. It's not pitching. I've made the commitment to that. You'll see that a little bit later on here. It's not pitching, because I'm going to show you the outline of the program that we're using right now, which I really like. It's not pitching, but it's going to be something else is going to be given up as we try to get that defending small ball a little more back into our practices. And then at the end, we're going to do a revisit of our practice and where do you need to improve, where do you need to work on, and how do we do it? How do we work on the things that we decide? So what the next thing you're going to do after you create, after you figure out what it is that you're good at, what it is that you're not good at. And you may already have an idea, but writing it down and maybe going through some of the numbers can help you out a lot. Like maybe you think that your team isn't very good at defending, and then you look at your fielding percentage and it's been improving year over year. So really we're just kind of trying to formalize this process with you of finding out what it is that isn't going very well. So what resources? I'm going to pump Cornerstone Elite here real quick. We do have a Super Bowl 54. That's what that LIV is there. We do have a Super Bowl 54 special coming up where you can join for 1 year for 54% off of the monthly price. So that is for $104 per year. So I'm just going to pump that a little bit. It's a great resource. I get in there and help you as well. So if you're a new member, you can get that deal. It'll be open for 48 hours here after this web clinic. And then it'll also, I'm going to open it up during the Super Bowl again, but why not get started now? That'll give you almost a month's head start on going through the material and getting everything that you need to get ready for your season. You probably start in late January, early February, late February, something like that. So you might as well start right now. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a peek inside there later as well. What books are you reading? What book are you reading? Books. If you go through there and you say, hey, relationships, communication, that's my thing. What books are you reading? Podcasts are great. Not just mine. You should listen to my podcast. It's a quick hitter, but man, there's some great podcasts out there. Ahead of the Curve with Jonathan Gellner, a good friend of mine from Oklahoma, absolutely outstanding podcast, brings on some of the best guests that there are out there. Start subscribing to those. It takes very little. Once you identify your weaknesses, to go through podcasts and figure out which ones are going to help you out by just reading the title of them. Are you going to attend clinics? There's online clinics. There's in-person clinics. I think in-person clinics are a great way not only to learn, but also to network and work with coaches who are of similar, who coach similar areas to you. And so, the greatest thing about clinics is not necessarily sitting in the seat and watching the presentation. It's talking to the presenters afterwards or talking with the other people in the audience afterwards as well. The camaraderie, what you can learn from people, really one of the best things I think you can do. Great investment. And then there's lots of baseball websites out there, obviously Cornerstone, but there's a lot of other great baseball websites out there, blogs, articles you can go to read about the game. But you've got to have a plan, and you only have a plan by knowing your weaknesses. You can do that through using that self-scouting form. One of my favorite GIFs right there. It's a GIF. I don't know. I think it's a GIF. That's one of my favorite ones right there. Took a snapshot of that. We're going to look at creating some SMART goals for ourselves. You can use this goal setting process for your players as well. It works exactly the same. So if you've never heard of SMART goals before, I'll go through with what they are and then go through each of the individual letters of the acronym for you. The first one is specific. It has to be measurable. Goals need to be attainable. They need to be relevant. That's a really important one here. That's, to me, that's the one that we're going to talk about that is going to kind of throw some of you, and threw me off because of the way that I used to set goals and used to have my players set goals. That's the one right there that I really think is going to kind of throw this off. And then it has to be time sensitive. Okay. They got to have an end date to it. Goals have to be specific. A broad goal would be to get better at pitching, right? That was our broad goal, right? Well, I want to get better at pitching. What do we need to do? Well, we added a "so that" to it, right? So when we wrote this goal, it gives it a little bit of a why. Okay, we need to improve velocity. That was the one that we looked at and said, look, our command as a staff is generally good. Our off-speed stuff is generally good. We struggle with velocity. We don't throw very hard as a staff, and we never have. So we need to improve velocity so that we have a larger margin of error with our pitchers. We can strike out more hitters and take the pressure off our defense. I'm not talking about creating guys who throw 90, but they throw it all over the place. I'm talking about taking our guys who've had the same command, putting that same process in play with them, and then trying to ratchet up our velocity development for all of our players throughout all of our programs. That's the specific goal that we created throughout our program. We started it last year. We've seen some really good results. We had by far our hardest throwing staff ever last year after just 1 year. I anticipate this year's staff will be even better, and hopefully we just continue to build off of that. The goals have to be measurable, not things that aren't measurable. I want to get better at hitting. Great. What does that mean? You want to get better at hitting what? Fastballs down the middle, better at hitting off a tee. You want to get better at hitting. What does that mean? How do you know if you did it? A lot of times people think that measurable means it has to be a number. It doesn't necessarily have to be a number. Measurable just means you have to know if you did it or not. You have to be able to look at it and say, we did it for sure, or we did not do it for sure. So get better at hitting. That's something that's not necessarily measurable. Improve our average exit velocity, or our exit velocity by an average of 5% per player. That's measurable. Okay, and I would throw average exit velocity in there just because there's a huge difference between average and peak exit velocity. Peak exit velocity is how, is a showcase thing. Average exit velocity is a hitter thing. How often do you hit the ball really hard? We like that. That would be a great goal. Improve our average exit velocity by an average of 5% per player. Very measurable. Something we can do. When we set the pitching goals, we wanted to go up 2 miles an hour in 1 year on our top, I think we said 6 or 8 pitchers, something like that. And we ended up going up almost 3.5. And some of it was a group that came through, but pretty much the same group of kids, a lot younger than the staff before them, and their velocity was quite a bit more. It's got to be something that's attainable. Non-attainable goals are things that don't have flexibility, number one. Okay. For instance, I want every pitcher in our team to throw 90 next season. Well, that's not attainable because you're going to have some kids that don't. That's kind of absurd and silly. But ones that are not, I call them not attainable, even though you could win every game next season. You lose your first game, that goal is out the window. Then what? Oh, you're going to lose one. Yeah, your goal is to win as many games as you can. So you want to make sure that there's some flexibility built into the goal so that if there is some failure, which there ultimately will be, the goal is still attainable. And I'm not talking about huge amounts of failure. if you won 75% of your games last year, don't make your goal to be 500. Assuming you have similar team, right? But there has to be some flexibility built into it. I remember our goal for a while there. We won every game in our conference for 2.5 years. I think we went undefeated in our conference for 2.5 years. And our goal, this was one of those mistake things, right? They made a mistake, I made a mistake doing this. And I said at the beginning of the year, I said, look, I want us to win every conference game. We need to win every conference game. That was one of our team goals, win every conference game. And then we lost like our third one. And it's like, well, that goal is done. Sometimes you can lose those goals early in the season, but for the most part, you want to try to make them so that they will be challenging but not too easy, and then also they're not going to be done the first week of your season. An attainable goal is obviously going to be based on where your team or program is. So something like improve our winning percentage by 20%. That would be something that's an attainable goal because it's based on where you're starting, right? So when you're thinking about this from your player's point of view, and a lot of us, we do this with our hitters a lot and our pitchers a lot. We have our pitchers set velocity goals during the season. We have our hitters set exit velocity goals during the season. We have guys set 60-yard dash goals during the season, which I think the 60 is that's a kind of a useless thing in baseball. But anyways, it's what showcases you, so kids like to do it. And the bottom line is they're getting faster, so great. But we'll have them do that. Like, where do you want to be by this point? And what that does is it lets them, if you're in the weight room right now, like we're in the weight room a lot right now, and kids know, like, hey, I want to deadlift 500 pounds by the time the season comes up, or I want to squat 315 pounds by the time the season comes up. So, but it's all based on where they're starting and where you're starting. So as you're going through this process with your team or your players, make sure they know it's all based on where you are right now and how we can improve that. Relevant goals. They have to be something that the individual or that the coach has some control over. I wasn't sure, and I still am not totally sure. Sorry about that. I had to get a little sip of tea there. I'm not totally sure how much control we have over that velocity goal, right? Like, I think we do. I think that what we put in place had a large amount of influence on the increase in velocity we had last year and the increase we plan on having this year. But I'm not like, things like win 10 games on the mound. Like, you can pitch great and not win 10 games, right? Like, we used to set goals with our players and they would come out like this because we didn't talk about what a relevant goal is. Like, a kid says, I want to win 10 games on the mound. Well, you got to get 10 starts on the mound, first of all. And that may be a little bit out of your control because the coach may decide not to start you 10 times. Or you may pitch great and you leave every game after 5 innings and it's 2-2 and you've thrown really well, but you're not getting any wins because of that. We want to make sure that they're relevant. A lot of times we'll use player development goals. Increase my velocity by 5% and improve the control on my breaking ball. These are things we can test and retest. I can give them an initial velocity test off the mound, do it again in 5 weeks, do it again in 5 weeks. I can test the control of their breaking ball. How many strikes do they throw with their breaking ball out of their, like we have charts. We have charts in Cornerstone Elite that we use that can track strikes and quality strikes. And then you can simply look at those and say, all right, well, in your first bullpen, your controlling your breaking ball was this. Your second bullpen, you throw this many for strikes, and you can look and see what the general trend is. You can have players who have those specific goals track them. They got to be time sensitive. So things that are not time sensitive, like I want to get faster, or I want to run a sub 7.0 60. The reason they've got to be time sensitive is because there has to be some pressure to perform. There has to be some pressure on them to work to get the goal. If the goal is just an endless goal, right? I want to run a sub 7. You can always push it back, right? I can always say, well, I didn't really work out today. I didn't sprint today. So we're going to move that back a little bit. Yeah, I'm not going to run that 7 yet. I got a little while. but if it's, I want to run a sub 7 by this, right? Or if it's, I'm going to increase my bat speed, right? This is a blast motion goal. I'm going to increase my bat speed while keeping my time to contact the same or better by our next assessment in 4 weeks. That gives them a time frame. I got 4 weeks to get this done. How am I going to do it? So as you're setting goals with your players and your staff, these are things to consider. And this is a good overview of a way that you can go about setting those goals with your players or with your staff. We did a goal setting with our staff last year where I sat down with them and I said, we went through a self-scouting process, and I said, what's your strengths? What's your weaknesses? What do you want to improve on, and how do you want to do it? And what we're actually doing right now is we're having weekly or bi-weekly meetings with our staff where I do as little talking as possible. I've put it out there to them that this is their time to show what they've learned about their weakness and the things that they want to get better at. Like our pitching coach, he wants to take over catching, which is really weird because he's left-handed, but he went out and he bought himself a left-handed catcher's mitt, and he's all into it. But it's good because your pitchers and your catchers work closely together. And so he's going to probably excel at this. He worked with catchers all throughout his career, and now he's just going to be coaching them. It was something I was coaching before. I've given up to him because it makes sense, and it was a goal he had that he wants to get better at, and he's going to learn how to. So his goal is to develop a daily and a long-term catching program by the start of the season. That's what he's trying to do. He's going through resources and finding different ways to do it. He's going through resources, running things by me, running things by one of our other coaches who is a catcher. He doesn't coach at the same level as us. He's our JV coach. And, that's his goal, right? And so it's measurable. It's not a number, but he can see, did I develop a program that people around me think is good? So then at the end here again, another gift for you. And if you're watching this, you've already probably clicked that link down below, and you've gotten so I got a SMART goal form down there as well that you can use. The self-scouting form is really powerful. It's going to take a little while. It's actually 10 pages, but it's a really, really powerful form. So the next thing we're going to look at is how are we going to do this? Daily habits and goals are extremely powerful. Whether you are your coach, or whether you're a coach, or whether you're trying to coach your players, daily habits are huge, and it starts with you as the coach. Things that I think are really, really important so that players see this about you, and then players are kind of feed off of that. Do you exercise? Not only do I think it sets a great example for our players, like I actually get in there with our players on lifting days, and I don't do it every day because I'm coaching them a lot of times and I'm working with younger guys lifting, but I will get in there and I will lift with them. And I think that's great to build camaraderie. I think it's great to build, they see that our coaches do it and they absolutely love it. I talk to our players about the books that I read. And I'll mention to them, hey, I read this in a book. Have you ever thought about this? Or, man, I just saw this I saw this on a podcast, heard this on a podcast. What do you guys think about this? But if you're not someone who's daily reading, daily getting podcasts, daily trying to learn, you miss out on that opportunity to have those interactions with players. And it's great that players see that you're always invested in trying to learn and get better. And then spending time with family, whether you have a family of your own or whether, you have parents, aunts, uncles, sisters, brothers, whatever it is. But when you talk to players about family, I think it's a really powerful thing. Using the time between now and the start of the season to improve. So right now, like our season starts March 2nd. Okay. So I've got a little while to get better here. How am I going to get better? I just joined another baseball membership site. I'm really excited to learn what's in there. I purchased the videos of the ABCA. I was not able to attend this year, but I purchased the live and the videos. And so I'm going to be able to go through them. I have my own goals, my own individual goals that I'm trying to get better at this year. So as I go through podcasts, I look at what it is. Here's a topic, doesn't pertain. Yep, there's one. Good. Let's listen to that. So here's the things that I'm going to try to do and some good ideas for you. Um, Less social media. I've deleted Twitter off my phone. I still will use it. I'll still get on it on my computer, but I've deleted it off my phone because it's something I don't need to spend time doing. I do find that I learn things on there, but I also find that when I'm using it on my phone, I am sometimes just mindlessly searching, and I end up looking at, cat videos or dog videos or Rex Chapman blocker charge or whatever. And man, you can get lost in those Rex Chapman blocker charges. Um, and he's been doing dog videos now, which is great. But the bottom line is, like, you can sit there and 30 minutes has gone by, and that's time you could have done one of those things up above. Okay. So I'm talking about taking care of the coach, the person, you, because if you're not taking care of you, it's going to be hard to take care of your players, to help your players. When are we going to do this? You have to have a plan as to when you're going to make these improvements, right? Like, we're all busy. I teach full time. I'm coaching. I have a family. I'm running this business here where I'm spending an hour right now with you. So when am I doing these things, right? How am I going to fit them in? What am I listening to in the car? Am I listening to podcasts? I get up every morning and work out. What am I listening to while I'm working out? Sometimes I listen to a comedy podcast. Sometimes I listen to music, but sometimes I listen to Ahead of the Curve with Jonathan Gellner, or I listen to Outside the Box Baseball with Pete Caliendo. I listen to these programs because it's time when I can do it. Then how often are you going to do it? But formalize this plan. Say, hey, when I do this, I'm going to listen to this podcast. I am going to read every night before I go to bed. Whatever works for you, create the habit and make it work. And that's one of the ways that you are going to be able to achieve your coaching goals for this year. And then make sure we're prepared. Make sure you're prepared for the season. Set your goals, your education goals, by the start of the season so that you're ready to go in, and then make sure that you're prepared each and every day. And this is ways that you're going to reach the goals that you set for yourself. You're just going to create these checklists. When am I going to do this? When am I going to do this? I'm going to be prepared for the season. I got to learn this, do this. I've got to improve this. We got to get better at this. This is good. This we can cut back on. But that's up to you, right? You're the one who has to do it. I can't sit on the other side of this microphone, or you can't go to a clinic and have someone else do it. You're the one who's got to sit down and figure out what it is you need to get better at, how you're going to do it. Great book I read. Goes way more into the goal setting process. Not really goals, more habits, right? Like, it talks about what you do on a daily basis and how to make habits, how to make habits go, why we have habits. Why does someone bite their nails? Why, why do you, when you come home from work every day, why do you throw back, two handfuls of Doritos? Like, it talks about those habits and then ways that you can go about changing them. I found this to be a really, really powerful book, and something that has helped change my life over the last 4 to 6 months since I read it. Probably about 4 months since I've read it. I've really enjoyed it, and I really think that it's beneficial. So if you're starting off, this is a great one to start off with this off season, because it's going to cause you to be able to change daily, and then you're going to reach those other goals and those other the other things that you're trying to accomplish. So what can you do before the season with your players? We can hit the weight room, right? And I don't know what your specific practice availability looks like. We are incredibly limited with our players. We are able to lift, we're able to condition, do any kind of conditioning. We are not allowed to instruct in the skills of the sport until March 2nd. We can hold open gyms, which we basically open up the cage. The players run the practice, and we sit there and say or do nothing. Very frustrating. Hopefully the state that you're in, or if you're a travel ball coach, you have more restrictions than that, or fewer restrictions than that, but you can hit the weight room. That's something we do. We say, hey, we can't coach these kids, but we can get after it in the weight room. We can secure funding for something if necessary. You want to go attend a clinic, go find the funding for it. For me with ABCA this year, it was more of a time issue than a funding thing. I could have found the money, certainly, to get down there. It was just more of a family and a time commitment thing. But if there's something you want to do and you need to fundraise for it, if there's something you want to change in your program and you need to fundraise for it, then go ahead, right? Like, we saved up money in the year of 2018 from our fundraiser, combined that with camp money that we used, that we got in the summer of 2018. And in 2019, we made about a $3,000 investment in our pitching program. And we bought a Rapsodo for a hitting Rapsodo for $3,000. And trust me, we run very average fundraisers, right? We sell those discount cards and we run camps. It's not that hard to do to make a few $1,000, but we were able to do that. We earmarked that money. We didn't get t-shirts. We didn't get those kinds of things. We earmarked that money and we said, we're going to use this to invest back into our program. So that's something you can do between now and then. Go to your booster club, run a fundraiser, figure out what it is that you need to improve the areas that you've identified as your weaknesses. If you need to take a course, go take a course. If you need to go to a clinic, go to a clinic. If you need to travel somewhere, try to get that done now before the end of the season. Again, this one's kind of a repeat, but we're going to identify the areas we need work, learn as much as you can about it, and then implement it as well as you can. And then it's okay to have a 2 to 3 year plan as well. Some things are better done slowly. When we implemented our pitching program, if I had to do it again, I would have started it in the summer, because summer we have pretty much practice in the summertime. I would have started in the summer. And then that way, when we hit the ground running in the spring, we've got a little bit of better idea of it. We just weren't ready for it yet that summer. We had to spend the off season learning about it, getting the equipment and getting all that stuff. So I would have done it in the summer, and then that way would have made the transition into the year much smoother. The beginning of the year was rather rough as we were starting to get, trying to start that. All right, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to give you 2 examples of things that, that I developed based on some of these goals and some of these needs, right? The first one's our pitcher first practices and workout program. So I'm going to go back to full screen here in just a second. Okay. All right, and then we're going to take a quick jaunt inside to Cornerstone Elite, and I'm going to show you this program that that we're talking about here. Okay. All right, so inside Cornerstone Elite, real quick. Every month in January, I'm doing 4 of them, 4 Q&As. Coaches can ask any question at all, and I answer it, give them in-depth answer. The format's just like this. I've been doing them live with our coaches. It's turned out great. At the beginning here, what you see is our most recent tips that have been added. Down here is the archive of all of our video and audio tips. So if you go in there, again, you can operate it kind of like, hey, I need work on base running and we want to improve our base running. Click on Elite video tips. Nope, base running, boom, base running, boom. You can go through there. Then each of these sections of the Elite members area here, this is where you can go to get questions answered, practice plans for travel ball and high school, college teams there. All of our forms, data, all of our charts that we use in game and in practice right there. Online courses are in there. We're going to go take a look inside of the Elite Pitching Center. It's a great picture there, much younger me. Okay. So what I want to show you guys is kind of the overall of what ended up coming out of this goal setting process that we had, right? So what we ended up doing was we ended up creating a daily, through a variety of different resources, a daily warm up and cool down, a daily warm up and recovery routine. But the biggest thing that we did was we created this Google Doc right here that me and my pitching coach share. And so you would get access to this as well. This is just a really quick oversight, but the idea here is that it's color coded. And there's a video down below it that explains it a lot more in detail, but this is where we ended up going. And this is, I know this is not a pitching talk, but I want to show you kind of the end result of the story I told at the beginning. So we had heavy usage guys, moderate usage guys, and then developmental players down there as well. Some of those quarterbacks are in the wrong spot. Anyways, so and then what we did was we basically created protocols for 3 different types of days. For a light day, which is the red, or a recovery day, where they're going to do very little throwing. A yellow day, which is a moderate intensity day, and a green day, which is a heavy day, where they're going to be either doing a bullpen or some kind of a like heavy pull downs, weighted ball work, something like that. And the reason I love this is because it gave our pitchers purpose every single day they showed up. So as part of our goal that we set was, to increase velocity, and then we went into the how are we going to do it? A big part of the how was we need to have purpose for them every single day. They cannot come to practice without a plan. They cannot come to practice and I throw in a bullpen today. Like, our kids know ahead of time exactly what's going to happen when they show up to practice. Last year we did not share that with them. This year we're going to share this with them. So they're going to be able to get in and see where they're at, see what they're doing that day ahead of time. We told them when they got to practice, and then they knew exactly what they had to do because we had the cards laminated, and they just went right to it. With the next, oh, you got a green day, good. You're on a bullpen, you got a yellow day. Here's your card. Go get done what you need to get done. And so that's what the sheet looks like right there that we created. Obviously, we had our pitchers' names in there. We will not have this in for our players. We will not have heavy, moderate, and developmental. We won't have that in there for them. We'll know that information on our own. But we do. I explain in the video down there. Again, this web clinic is not about pitching, but we do treat all of them a little bit different. The heavy usage, moderate, and developmental. They are treated a little bit different in that the biggest idea is that most of our heavy usage guys, most of their green days are going to be bullpens or in-game throwing, whereas our developmental pitchers, a lot of their green days will be long toss or weighted balls or something along those lines, because one of the reasons they're probably developmental is they don't have very good velocity. So that was great, I think, for our program. The other thing I wanted to show you in here real quick, which came off of one of my goals for last summer, which was to try to be able to operate a camp with 60 players with only 2 coaches. And so it's one of the things that I developed for that last year. It's in our infield section right there. Is these 6 infield rotations. I'm going to explain one of them real quick. I'm going to pick one of them. I think a lot of you have probably seen maybe number 1. I'm going to show you number 2 right here. I'm just going to explain it real quick. But the goal was to try to get 24 players active in the infield, and not only active, but improving with 1 coach. That was my goal. And so here's what I created to do that. Right down here, you'll see I diagram it. Again, if I click that, it'll give you the video. I'm just going to give you a quick overview. But station number 1 down here, they've got 6 players. They've got 3 buckets. They're doing toe-up drill with 2-step footwork. Over here, they've got toe-up drill with 2-step footwork. We add a throw. Now, what you'll notice is the players are the ones who are running these drills. So what I'm doing is I've got my glove, and I'm going around, and I'm actually getting into these drills with them. But I'm also kind of overseeing everything. They're the ones who are running it. Once they learned this summer how to run those drills and run each of them, it was like clockwork. I was able to walk around, spot check, spot improve, coach guys, get in and work out with them. And they love when you get in and field with them or whatever. And so I was able to do that because it was kind of like running on its own. And each of the drills was accomplishing something that I wanted them to get better at. In the middle here, we've got double play feeds. Notice a bucket right down there behind. And then here we had at third base area, we had guys running backhands or forehands or short run throughs. And then what we did was they went from station 1 to station 2 to station 3 to station 4. Our lefties were only first baseman or feeders right here, and they were only feeders in the middle. Other than that, lefties did everything. We tried to train like we got a right-handed first baseman. He's turned double plays in the middle. He's going to get more athletic. He's going to get better. It was really great to see them doing that. And I think it added a little spice to them, right? If you're a first baseman, you come to practice. It's like I sit over here, I catch balls all day. Great. It's a lot of fun. No, now they're turning double plays and, doing fun stuff like that. So I really thought that was great. But that was two things that I created based on our need, based on something I wanted to do, and based on a goal that I set and a weakness that I saw in our program. The weakness I saw in our camp was we had 60 kids sign up, and we had 2 coaches there for a week because one of our coaches, and it's fine, he went to Disney with his family. Great. We got to adapt. We got a 30-to-1 coach to player to coach ratio. I'm going to go ahead and get out of Cornerstone Elite because now what I have is what we had. Had some coaches submit questions ahead of time, and I am going to take those questions right now. I did have some people who put in questions that were not related to goal setting, or I could not relate to goal setting. There's some here that are not specifically talking about goal setting, but I'm going to answer them in the framework of goal setting. This is a web clinic about goal setting, so I'm not going to answer specific questions about hitting or pitching or anything like that, right? We don't have time for all that. Plus, I do that for our Cornerstone Elite members. They can ask any question, any topic, anytime that they want. And so this one is, we're going to stick to our goal setting questions here. So this comes from Kelly. Kelly's a 15U coach. He says, what are specific ways you connect with your players? So the reason I'm attacking this one is because this was one of my off-season goals this year, is I wanted to connect with players on our team better, not just players on our team, right? But because usually, unless you got a guy who's a real attitude issue, usually the top half of your roster you can connect with pretty well. A lot of times it's those bottom half guys that are difficult to connect with because, sometimes you get lost in the shuffle. And so my goal has been to not lose them in the shuffle. And so one of the things that I've tried to do this year is with every player on our team, and we haven't made teams yet, right? We have tryouts in March, so we don't know what our team is, but I know the guys who are coming out for the team. And what I've tried to do is I've tried to reach them in some way once a week. I've tried to talk to them doesn't have to be about baseball. I've tried to reach them once a week. Now, I teach strength and conditioning, so I'm in our PE department, and I see pretty much all of our players at any given time. But if you don't, if you have a practice, like Kelly, you're a 15U coach, and so you're a travel coach. I assume you have some things going on this off season. Try every week to talk in some way, whether it's about baseball or not about baseball, preferably not about baseball. Talk to every player on your team. It doesn't have to be long. Ask them a quick question. Ask them something real fast. Tell them a story real fast. Something like that. Show that you have interest in them. To me, those are the really powerful things that make a difference to them. It's not like we do some of this stuff, but not a ton of it. Like we don't do go play laser tag twice a week for team building or something like that. Like I know some coaches have great success with that kind of thing, or these like formal settings where you have this like formal leadership plan. Like my thing is I want things to be authentic. And so I want to have conversations with my players that are authentic, that happen off the cuff. It's difficult for me. I know that I run a website, I'm a coach, but I'm kind of an introvert and I'm not really comfortable around people at first initially. I'm just really not. And so it's difficult for me to make small talk and to build something more than small talk with players. And so that's why it's been a goal of mine this year, is to try to connect one-on-one with a player each week. It doesn't have to be really long, but I'm starting with our varsity team and the kids who I anticipate will be coming out for our varsity team. And I'm just trying to, how's your day today? How's your grades doing? Hey, I heard you got a new puppy, things like that. And that's the most powerful thing to me. And put yourself in a kid's shoe, right? Do you want to sit in a classroom and go through some leadership thing, or do you want to have your coach come up to you and ask you how your life is and how things are going? You'd much rather have that second one. Rick W, and this one's obviously a hitting question, but I'm going to approach it a from a goal setting perspective. So Rick is an 11U to 14U coach, and I'm going to answer his question with a question. So how do I get my hitters more consistent, Rick? What are your hitters bad at? Why aren't they consistent? What is it that they do that makes them not consistent in general? Or can you target 2 or 3 or 4 buckets, and you can say, well, we're not consistent because over here we don't have a lot of bat speed, and over here we don't have very good attack angle, and over here we don't have this, right? Can you bucket players, and then you can say these players need to work on this, and these players need to work on this, and these players need to work on this, and that's how you can make it more consistent. And then what you can do as a coach is you can set a goal for yourself to try to learn how to bucket them and what specifically to do. Rick, I don't believe you're an elite member, but in elite, we have a course called Recognizing, Diagnosing, and Fixing Common Hitting Flaws, and it shows you how to do exactly that, how to bucket your players and give them drills and things that are, and philosophies and ideas that are specific to their individual weaknesses. And so that's what I would encourage you to do. Is I would encourage you to say, why aren't we consistent? And then find a way to assess your hitters and figure out why you're not consistent. And then you go out and learn what it is that your hitters need to do to get better. So you go out and you say, okay, we've got poor bat speed. What do I do to increase bat speed? I got poor pitch selection. What do I do to increase, make them better, make them swing at better pitches? So there, I answered the hitting question, but it was from a goal setting perspective. And that's how I would attack that process right there. Not trying to dodge the question again, just using this as a goal setting. This is a goal setting one. Did I skip one there? Yeah. Mike P, how can I motivate players during off-season workouts? Again, a little bit of a goal setting thing here. Our kids love PRs. I put a leaderboard up. So I have, you may not have a software program that does this, but there's certainly a way that you could do this. I have a software program that they enter all their weights into. I push the workouts out to them. They enter their weights. And what it does with every set is it calculates their 1-rep maxes, right? So every single time they do a lift, they enter, I did 10 reps at 135 pounds, and it gives them it gives me 157 pounds as their estimated 1-rep max from that. And so what I do then is I just put a leaderboard up of senior through sophomores. Our freshmen are still on a developmental program. I don't want them going really heavy and lifting really heavy. But in our weight room, it's just a paper list. It's nothing fancy. I didn't get one of those big giant boards or anything like that. It's a paper list. I print it out. I do it once a month. So I do it for November, December, January, February, and probably do it for March. I might keep it going through the season because I believe in lifting heavy in the season. And you'll be surprised how many kids go over there and look at that. And they're like, hey, how can I get my name up there? Okay, we got front squat today, and I'm a sophomore, and here's what I need to do. And so setting personal records is a big deal, right? A thing I've thought about in the weight room that I've not yet used. And the only way that they can get on that leaderboard is if they're at your workouts, right? So they can't get on that leaderboard if they're not at your workouts, right? If they work out somewhere else, they can't get on that leaderboard. They've got to be working out with you to get on that leaderboard. That's fine. Like, they can go work out somewhere else, but this is our leaderboard. This is not someone else's leaderboard. This is our leaderboard. Another thing I've thought about doing is a fail succeed posters in our room. One of our computer science teachers uses this, and basically one of them is you go over there and you just write something you failed at, right? I tried to deadlift 500 pounds, still can't do it. Okay, and then on the other one, when you finally get something, you get to cross it off over here and you get to go put it on that other side over there. So there's just some small ideas there that may help. But again, kind of related to goal setting, right? Because by putting that thing up on the board, that's a de facto goal, right? Like, hey, still can't deadlift 500 pounds. Like, that's a goal, okay? When do we want to do it by? Well, end of the season, right? So that's specific, measurable, attainable, assuming they're close to 500 pounds, relevant, and time sensitive. So, how do I encourage and develop player-led leadership rather than strictly coach-led leadership? Um, I've had trouble with this because I'm a little bit of a control freak, because to me, I do the things that I want to do better than other people will do them. Not talking down to people. I'm just saying, like, I have a standard and other people don't do them the way I would. And sometimes I looked at those things and I said, that's not exactly what I would do. And then I had to learn that that is okay. Um, in the off season, okay, we're starting this now. Our players, our juniors and seniors, are responsible for helping our younger kids in the weight room. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Harold, you were one that you were talking about having a struggle with some other teams that kids were going to their workouts. I can't remember if this was exactly you, and I do apologize. But just strictly setting that up, and again, I usually don't like formal things, but this is kind of cool. I set kids up in pairs, right, or groups of three, and then the two guys are responsible for the younger guy, or the one older guy is responsible for the two younger guys. And then if they're not showing up, they get in touch with them. Where have you been? Okay, cool. Yeah, can you make it tomorrow? Great. And then when they're there, they work out with them. They show them the ropes. They show them how to work out. It's been huge for our program that we don't have freshmen working with freshmen and sophomores working with sophomores, to have this intermingle, because now your seniors know your freshmen and your juniors know your sophomores. And it's really worked out great for us. So that's one way I would do it. Another way I would do it is with things like that rotation thing there. So like if this is a goal of yours, right? Like that, the infield rotation thing I set up there, that I'm there to help, but they're the ones running the drills and they're the ones getting it going, right? I'm just there to help and walk around and make sure that I can spot check things. So setting up things like that where they're in charge of them, I think is huge. Have players have players set a goal of being able to describe or explain something to the team or to another player or something like that. That can be part of your goal setting process. What do you want to explain, or what do you want to teach, or what do you want to show to a younger guy, a freshman, a sophomore? What about our program do you want to show to them? All right. What is the best way to get my assistant coaches on board with a new philosophy of coaching? I've had assistants who will not follow and want to do the same old ways of coaching. Yeah. Dan, I'm with you. My assistants are great. I'm not talking, but I know I've had experience working with other coaches who have had this same thing, and I've seen it happen. An example of this is a coach and his son shows up. Neither will not participate in pregame hitting drills. They go off and do their own thing away from the whole team. All right. So, Dan, you're a 11U to 14U coach. So you're in a little bit of a different, situation than I am, because my guess is that people there are volunteers, right? Whereas like for me, they're paid. So I'm their boss. The athletic director is my boss. If I'm not happy with them, I can fire them. You probably can't fire someone if if they can't make these changes, right? If you go to this guy and you say, hey, can you come over with your son over here? I'd like you to work with the team and not with them. So my question is, what's he in charge of? Thinking back to the self-scouting form, right? What's he in charge of? What's this coach who's taking his son off to the other side in charge of? What's his responsibility? Does he have one? Does he have one at the beginning of practice during this pre-warm-up hitting time? Do you have something you need him to do, or can you give him something important to do? Because if you're like, hey, you're throwing batting practice, and he goes off and works with his kid, there's no one to throw batting practice. So see if you can give him something really important to do. And maybe he just needs more responsibility. Maybe he feels like he's being, I guess, quote unquote, left out. Because the two things you're talking about there are kind of different questions, right? The bottom one, that's how I would handle that. The top one, I think that one can be handled with goal setting, right? Like, but also in relation to the bottom answer as well. So like you, I need you to be in charge of X, Y, and Z. Let's learn about it. Show me what you're going to do. Show me the resources you're going to use to do this, to learn about this, to get better. We all need to get better. Here's what I'm getting better at. And that might give him a little more ownership. And then it also might motivate him if he sees that you're also willing to learn and that you're trying to get better and you're trying to make changes. And like, hey, I listened to this podcast, I joined this website, I did this, then you can certainly try to hold him accountable by giving him responsibility during that time, number one. And then number two, leaving something open-ended for him to go research, right? Like, hey, maybe he's a hitting guy. Hitting guys are so, if a guy is old school and in a bad way, there's good old school and there's bad old school. If he's an old school, bad old school hitting coach, that's going to be tough to change. But, give him, like, if it's an area that you want someone to become a little more knowledgeable in, give them and say, hey, go find something, or guide them in the right direction. Hey, try one of these three things. Like with my coach, who was the lefty catching guy, he had no idea where to start. So I kind of pointed him in the direction of like, and it's my way of being a little bit involved in it. But I was like, hey, here's 4 catching guys. I want you to go follow them on Twitter, stalk them on Twitter, stalk them on Facebook, get on their website. If you want to join one of them, let me know. We'll pay for it. We'll get it taken care of for you. And so I think that that's one way that you could do that, is you could challenge all your coaches, like I did, to learn and get better at a certain area that they're going to be in charge of, so then that gives him something to do during that time. But that's goal setting, right? Like you can sit down and set goals with them of what they need to get better at, give them a timeline and when they need to do it by. All right. This next one here, sorry, I have to get out of this to read it. I apologize, my screen there. Mike, I love this. And so I'm only putting this up there so that other coaches can see it. It says, I have each player set and write their goals down and then swap this list with a teammate. The teammates are required to help and ensure his teammate is doing what is needed of him to reach or exceed his goals. My assistant coaches and I supervise this process, but only intervene when needed or requested. Sometimes I need to set a fire under some of them. Yeah, that's kids. That's working with kids. Mike, I believe, is a high school coach. So far, I have only used this for one season. Should I continue this, or do you know of a better way to help players with their goals? A couple things. Like, I love this process because publicly stating your goals is so huge, because then someone else knows about it, right? Like if me and my buddy and our goal, my goal is to break 80 at golf, and my buddy knows about it, and he golfs with me and I'm shooting 81, 84, then he knows about it. Hey man, let's say I was actually had time to do this stuff. Hey man, you're shooting 81 and you 3-putted 7 greens today. Like go hit the putting green, man. But they can hold each other accountable. If they can do that, I think it's amazing. That is the most powerful thing that can happen on a team, right? So through the goal setting process, you're building leadership into your goal setting process. We had a question earlier. This might be a good one to look at. My question would be, did you like the results of it? So you said, should I continue this? Did you like what happened with it, or did it not quite work out? One of the things that I like that I saw our basketball coach do a handful of years ago, and they have a different locker room now, so I'm not in it all the time, but I used to notice that the kids had their goals taped to the inside of their locker. So every time they open up their locker, boom, their goals were right there. it doesn't work if you have if you go back to the SMART goal thing. If you have uh, irrelevant goals or goals that are out of their control, it can actually backfire on you, right? Like if a kid's like, I want to hit 10 homers this year, and he's got 30 at bats halfway through the year, that's going to probably backfire a little bit. So we need to make sure they're relevant and they're player development oriented. Um, and I think that can be something powerful to them, is that it's right there in their locker. But Mike, I love what you did with these players here. I absolutely love it, and I hope that you continue it again this year. I would, as long as you think that it was beneficial, but maybe just look at what went wrong and try to tweak it to make it a little bit better. All right, so that was that for us today. I know that I did get more questions, but again, I apologize. I'm not going to answer all questions here just because it was a goal setting specific, specifically web clinic. I do want to mention one more time. I do want to mention here one more time that we have, and I've left a link to this below. We do have both our two gifts. And then also for those of you that are looking for a resource, I showed you inside of Cornerstone a little bit, but we do have a Super Bowl special running here. I'm going to open and close this window right now. It'll be open again during the Super Bowl. But once again, if you're going to get started, there's no better time. You know, the best time to get started was yesterday. The next best time is today. And with that yearly subscription, you will get access for your coaching staff as well. So with our yearly subscription, you get 8 unique logins for your coaching staff. So if goal setting as a staff is something that you want to do, Elite can be a great resource for them, because you can point them in different directions. You don't have to go out and join a catching site, a hitting site, a pitching site. You can say everything's included right in this one site here. You can, for $104 for 1 year, it's 54% off of the monthly price for a year. And so I think that's a great way to work on this goal setting with your staff. If you guys have areas you want to get better at, you can certainly join Cornerstone Elite. And then you get access to me too. So as guys are struggling or having trouble or have questions they want to ask, they can ask me. And I answer questions several times a week in a format like this. I have forums that I answer, and I answer questions on email. So any of those different ways are ways that you can get in touch with me and get the most out of the membership, in addition to, all the programs for hitting, fielding, pitching, things like that. So thank you so much for sticking around here. And it's been a great web clinic. Again, got me so excited because now I'm ready to go back. I've already done the goal setting process a little bit. I'm ready to go back, get back into it, and start, diving into my other membership that I joined, to start watching ABCA videos. Really excited about it. So thank you so much for being here today. Have a wonderful rest of your off season. Listen to the podcast, join Cornerstone Elite, go listen to another podcast, join another website, do whatever you have to do to get better this year, so that coming into next year, you're ready, your players are ready, and you guys can go kick some butt in 2020. So have a great rest of the week, and never stop learning.